In the heart of Manhattan, where glass towers scraped against the clouds and fortunes were made before breakfast, Marcus Chen wiped down the marble countertops of Luminescence, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, the same hands that had once held paintbrushes with dreams of becoming an artist. Now they held cleaning rags and served plates to people who spent more on a single meal than he earned in a month. Marcus had come to New York 5 years ago with a portfolio, ambition, and $300 to his name. The city had chewed through his savings in 2 weeks. The art galleries wanted connections he didn't have, pedigrees from schools he couldn't afford. So he found work where he could, first as a dishwasher, then gradually working his way up to server at Luminescence. The irony wasn't lost on him that he spent his evenings surrounded by beauty he'd never possess, serving people who barely looked at his face. It was a Thursday evening in October when everything changed. Marcus was covering the private dining section, a room reserved for the ultra-wealthy who wanted to conduct business away from curious eyes. He pushed through the heavy oak doors, balancing 3 plates of seared duck breast that cost $200 each, when he collided with someone coming from the opposite direction. The plates crashed to the floor. Marcus's heart dropped with them. That was $600 of food, probably his job, definitely the end of any hope he had of saving enough to eventually pursue his art again. But when he looked up to apologize, the words died in his throat. She was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, and she was laughing. Not the polite, uncomfortable laugh of someone trying to diffuse an awkward situation, but genuine, full-bodied laughter that seemed to light up the dimly lit hallway. She had knocked over a small serving cart in the collision, and champagne was now spreading across the Persian rug in an expanding puddle. "I am so sorry," she said, still smiling, her dark eyes meeting his. "I wasn't watching where I was going. I was trying to escape, actually. There's this incredibly boring dinner happening in there, and I just needed a moment to breathe." Marcus found his voice. "No, it was my fault. I should have been more careful. And now I've probably lost my job and you've ruined your dress." He gestured helplessly at the champagne stains spreading across the hem of what was clearly a designer gown. "This dress cost $8,000, she said, looking down at it with amusement rather than dismay. "And honestly, I've never liked it. My mother picked it out. As for your job, don't worry about that. I'll take care of it." She extended her hand. "I'm Sophia. Sophia Hartwell." The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. Hartwell, as in Hartwell Industries, the technology and real estate empire that had shaped half of New York's skyline. As in Richard Hartwell, the billionaire whose face appeared regularly on magazine covers and business news segments. This woman standing in a puddle of champagne and duck sauce was one of the richest heiresses in America. He shook her hand, acutely aware of his calloused palm against her soft one. Marcus Chen. And you really don't have to worry about my job. I'll explain to my manager what happened." "You'll do no such thing," Sophia said firmly. "I crashed into you. Besides, any manager who would fire someone over an accident isn't worth working for." She glanced back toward the private dining room, where the murmur of voices and clinking of silverware continued. "Look, I need to get back before they send a search party, but I want to make this right. Are you free tomorrow afternoon? There's a gallery in Chelsea I've been meaning to visit. You could come with me, help me pick out something for my apartment. I'll pay for your time, obviously." Marcus should have said no. Every instinct told him that people from her world and people from his didn't mix, that this was charity dressed up as an invitation, that he would only be setting himself up for humiliation. But there was something in her eyes, a genuine warmth that made him believe she saw him as a person rather than a servant or a project. "I don't need payment," he heard himself say, "but I'd love to go to a gallery with you. I used to paint, actually, before I moved here." Sophia's face lit up. "Perfect. Then you're exactly who I need. Meet me at the Kepler Gallery on 10th Avenue at 2 o'clock. Now, help me clean up this mess before someone slips and sues us both." They spent the next 10 minutes on their hands and knees, mopping up champagne and gathering broken plates while trying not to laugh too loudly. When Marcus's manager eventually found them, Sophia stood up with such natural authority that the man immediately started apologizing to her instead of firing Marcus. She dismissed his concerns with a wave of her hand, insisted on paying for the damaged food and champagne, and left a tip that was 3 times the cost of the meal her family had ordered. The next day, Marcus arrived at the Kepler Gallery 15 minutes early, wearing the only decent outfit he owned, a simple black sweater and jeans he'd bought second-hand. He felt out of place immediately. The other gallery visitors wore designer labels and spoke in hushed, educated tones about composition and technique. He was about to leave when Sophia appeared, wearing jeans and a simple white shirt, looking somehow more elegant than everyone else in the room. "You came," she said, genuinely pleased. "I was worried you might think I was crazy after last night." They spent 3 hours wandering through the gallery. Marcus forgot to be nervous as they discussed the paintings, his years of study and passion bubbling back to the surface. Sophia listened intently, asked questions that showed she was really paying attention, and offered her own observations that revealed a sharp, thoughtful mind. She bought 2 pieces that afternoon, and when the gallery owner asked where to send them, she gave Marcus's address. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked as they left the gallery. "You said you used to paint," Sophia replied. "These are for you. Consider it a late birthday present." "My birthday isn't for 6 months, and those paintings cost more than I make in a year." "Then consider it an early present. Or don't consider it a present at all. Consider it an investment in an artist I believe in, even though I haven't seen your work yet." She stopped walking and turned to face him directly. "Marcus, can I be honest with you? I meet a lot of people. Most of them want something from me, or they're intimidated by my family's money, or they're both. You're neither of those things. You looked at me last night like I was just a person who had crashed into you, not like I was a Hartwell. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Over the following weeks, they continued to meet. Coffee shops in Brooklyn where no one knew Sophia's face. Late-night diners where they were just another couple sharing fries. Museums during off hours. Each time, Marcus learned more about the woman behind the famous name. She was brilliant, having graduated top of her class from Harvard with degrees in both business and art history. She was funny, with a dry wit that caught him off guard. She was lonely, trapped in a world of expectations and obligations that left little room for genuine connection. And she was falling for him. He could see it in the way she laughed at his jokes, in how she unconsciously leaned toward him when they talked, in the way her hand would find his as they walked. The terrifying part was that he was falling for her too, despite knowing how impossible it all was. The reality of their different worlds crashed back in on a November evening when Sophia invited him to a charity gala her family was hosting. She'd asked him 3 times before he finally agreed, and now he stood in a rented tuxedo in a ballroom that probably cost more to decorate than most people's houses, surrounded by New York's elite. Sophia stayed by his side as much as she could, introducing him simply as "my friend Marcus." But he could see the calculation in people's eyes, the unspoken question of what someone like him was doing there. The moment that changed everything came when Sophia's father approached them. Richard Hartwell was a tall, imposing man whose presence commanded attention even in a room full of powerful people. He shook Marcus's hand with a grip that was just a shade too firm. "So you're the young man Sophia's been spending time with," he said, his voice pleasant but his eyes cold and assessing. "She tells me you work at Luminescence. Server, is that right?" "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, refusing to be intimidated. "I've been there for 2 years. And before that?" "Various restaurants around the city. Before that, I was trying to make it as an artist." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "An artist. How interesting. You know, I respect ambition. I started with nothing myself, built Hartwell Industries from the ground up. But I learned early on that success requires sacrifice, discipline, and most importantly, knowing which opportunities to pursue and which to walk away from. The message was clear. Marcus was an opportunity Richard expected him to walk away from. Sophia's hand found Marcus's, her fingers intertwining with his in a gesture that was both defiant and protective. "Dad, Marcus and I are going to get some air. We'll see you later." They escaped to a balcony overlooking Central Park, the sounds of the party muffled behind thick glass. Sophia was shaking with anger. "I'm so sorry. He had no right to speak to you that way." "He's protecting you," Marcus said quietly. "I'm not upset about that. If I were him, I'd probably do the same thing." "What are you saying?" Marcus turned to face her, memorizing every detail of her face in the moonlight. "I'm saying your father is right. Not about me being unworthy of you, nothing like that, but about the reality of our situations. Sophia, I'm barely making rent. You live in a penthouse that takes up an entire floor of a building your family owns. I take the subway to work. You have a driver. I'm trying to save money to maybe, someday, afford to paint again. You could fund 100 artists without noticing the expense." "None of that matters," Sophia insisted, her voice breaking. "I don't care about any of that. But your family does. Your friends do. The entire world you live in does. And eventually, I think it would start to matter to you too. Not because you're shallow, but because those differences would be there, in every moment, creating distance between us, even when we're standing right next to each other." "So what? You're just going to walk away? Give up on us because it's complicated?" "I'm saying I don't want to be the reason you lose your family or your place in a world you were born into. I'm saying I can't offer you anything close to the life you deserve." Sophia wiped angry tears from her cheeks. "You're offering me something none of those people in there can. You see me. Not the Hartwell name, not the money, not the connections. Just me. Do you have any idea how valuable that is?" They stood there in silence, the city sprawling beneath them, both knowing that love wasn't always enough to bridge certain divides. Finally, Marcus spoke. "If we're going to do this, really do this, we do it right. I'm not going to be your secret, and I'm not going to let you support me. I need to build something for myself first, something that makes me feel like I'm standing on equal ground with you, at least in terms of self-respect." "What are you proposing?" "I'm proposing that I spend the next year working my ass off. I'll save every penny I can. I'll paint every free moment I have. I'll find a way to get my work seen. And if, at the end of that year, I've built something real, something that's mine, then maybe we can figure out how to make this work. But you need to promise me that you'll live your life in the meantime. Date other people if someone interests you. Don't put your world on hold waiting for me to catch up to it." "I don't want anyone else," Sophia said fiercely. "Then in a year, I'll have worked to deserve that." What followed was the hardest year of Marcus's life. He worked double shifts at the restaurant, slept 4 hours a night, and spent every other moment painting. His tiny studio apartment became a jungle of canvases, the smell of paint and turpentine a constant presence. He painted everything, the city that had once felt so hostile, the dreams that had survived despite years of discouragement, the face of a woman he was afraid to call because he'd promised himself he wouldn't until he had something to show for his efforts. He didn't know that Sophia was fighting her own battles. Her father had threatened to cut her off completely if she continued to see Marcus. She'd called his bluff and moved out of the family penthouse, taking a modest apartment in the village funded by a trust her grandmother had left her that her father couldn't touch. She attended business school during the day and volunteered at art programs for underprivileged youth in the evenings, trying to bridge the worlds she and Marcus came from in the only way she knew how. They didn't speak for 11 months. Both of them honored the agreement, though it was agony. Then, one cold February evening, Marcus received a call from a gallery owner in Soho. Sophia had submitted his portfolio months ago without telling him. The owner wanted to feature his work in an upcoming show for emerging artists. The opening was packed. Marcus stood nervously beside his paintings, work that laid bare every emotion of the past year: his loneliness, his determination, his unwavering love for a woman he'd walked away from to become someone worthy of her. He was talking to a potential buyer when he felt a presence beside him and turned to find Sophia standing there, looking at his largest canvas, a portrait of her standing in that gallery a year ago, light from the paintings illuminating her face. "You remembered what I was wearing," she said softly, tears streaming down her face. "I remember everything about that day," Marcus replied. She turned to him, and suddenly nothing else in the crowded gallery mattered. "Did you date anyone this year?" "No. Did you?" "3 very boring dinners with men my father approved of, all of whom I couldn't wait to get away from. I kept comparing them to you, and they all fell short." Marcus laughed, feeling lighter than he had in months. "I sold 4 paintings tonight. It's not millions, but it's a start. It's mine." "It's brilliant," Sophia said. "You're brilliant, and I've waited long enough." She took his hand, the same gesture that had defied her father a year ago. "So what now?" "Now," Marcus said, "we figure it out together. It won't be easy. Your father still hates me. I'm still figuring out my career. We're still from different worlds. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the point isn't to be from the same world, but to build a new one together." The gallery owner approached them, excited to introduce Marcus to a major collector. Sophia started to step back to let him have his moment, but Marcus held onto her hand. "This is Sophia," he said. "My girlfriend, my muse, and the reason any of these paintings exist." She smiled at him, that same brilliant smile from the night they crashed into each other. "Technically, I'm also partially responsible for your first gallery show, so maybe I should get a commission." "You can have anything you want," Marcus said. "I just want you," she replied. "Everything else is just details." 3 years later, Marcus had a solo show at a major Manhattan gallery. 5 years after that, he and Sophia got married in a small ceremony attended by both their families, including Richard Hartwell, who had eventually come to respect the man who loved his daughter enough to become his best self before asking her to share his life. 10 years after they first collided in that restaurant hallway, they had 2 children and a life built not on money or status, but on mutual respect, shared dreams, and the kind of love that's strong enough to bridge any divide. Their story became something people talked about in New York, not because it was a fairy tale of a poor man marrying a rich woman, but because it was a reminder that real love requires courage, sacrifice, and the willingness to see past the surface to the human being underneath. Marcus never stopped painting, and every collection featured at least one portrait of Sophia, capturing different moments of their life together. Sophia eventually took over a division of Hartwell Industries focused on supporting arts education, using her family's resources to give other young artists the opportunities Marcus had to fight for. When people asked Marcus what made their relationship work, despite all the obstacles, he always gave the same answer. "We didn't let our circumstances define us. We decided who we wanted to be, both individually and together, and then we did the work to become those people. The rest was just details." And when people asked Sophia why she chose Marcus over any of the suitable men her family had introduced her to, she would smile and say, "Because he was the only one who saw me standing in a puddle of champagne and made me laugh. Everything else followed from that."